The alarm screamed through the station, and Captain Heywan knew their time had run out. She stood on the bridge of New Pyongyang's defense station, watching the scanner display fill with red dots. 300 enemy ships. The Velthran Dominion had finally found them. How long do we have? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. Tae-min, the young communications officer, looked up from his console. His hands shook slightly as he checked the readings. They'll be in firing range in 2 hours, Captain. Maybe less. Heywan closed her eyes for a moment. She was 53 years old and had been fighting this war since she was barely older than Tae-min. She remembered Earth before the invasion, remembered the blue oceans and green forests. Now Earth was a burned rock, and humanity clung to existence in scattered colonies like this one. New Pyongyang was the last free human settlement. For 5 years they had hidden in this asteroid field at the edge of known space. 40 ships, 12,000 people, and the desperate hope that somehow they could survive just one more day. Now that hope was dying with the arrival of the Velthran fleet. Admiral Dae-jung commanded that fleet. He was Velthran, but he had been born on a human world before the conquest. He knew how humans thought, how they fought, and how to break them. He had never lost a battle. His message appeared on the main screen, his face calm and confident. Captain Heywan, you know you cannot win this fight. Surrender now, and your people will be allowed to live under Dominion protection. Resist, and I will be forced to destroy everything you have left. Heywan wanted to curse at him, to scream defiance, but she knew it would change nothing. They had 40 ships against 300. They had limited ammunition and no reinforcements coming. The math was simple and brutal. What do we tell him? Tae-min asked quietly. Before Heywan could answer, Tae-min's console beeped. He frowned and began typing rapidly. Captain, I'm getting something strange from the colony archives. There's an old file that just unlocked itself when the alert went active. What kind of file? It's called Protocol Starfire. Military encryption from before the war. I think it's been sitting in our database for 20 years waiting for specific conditions to trigger it. Heywan felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. What does it say? Tae-min's fingers flew across the keyboard. It's damaged, but I can see parts of it. It's an emergency protocol from Earth High Command. Something about a beacon. If humanity's last colonies are about to fall, we're supposed to activate a quantum beacon using a specific frequency. A beacon? To call for help? There's no one left to help us. I don't think it's calling for help, Captain. The file mentions something called Phase 1 and Phase 2, and there's a list of coordinates, hundreds of them scattered across the galaxy. Heywan moved to stand behind Tae-min, reading over his shoulder. The file was fragmentary, corrupted by time and damage, but certain phrases stood out. Secret contingency, hidden assets, activate only in final extremity. Can you activate this beacon? She asked. I think so. The hardware is already installed in our station's core. It's been here the whole time, we just never knew what it was for. But Captain, we don't know what it will do. The file doesn't say what happens after the beacon is lit. Heywan looked back at the scanner. The Velthran fleet was moving closer, weapons charging. In 90 minutes, maybe less, they would start firing. New Pyongyang would fall like every other human colony had fallen. Unless there was something else, some final card that Earth's commanders had hidden before they died. Do it, she said. Activate the beacon. Captain, if I do this, every Velthran ship out there will detect the power surge. They'll know exactly where we are. They already know where we are, Tae-min. Light the beacon. The young officer nodded and began working. His fingers moved across multiple keyboards, entering commands and decryption keys. The station shuddered as ancient systems came online, drawing massive amounts of power from the reactor. Admiral Dae-jung noticed the power spike. His message appeared again, his expression hardening. Captain, what are you doing? Stand down immediately or I will open fire. Heywan ignored him. She opened colony-wide communications. All ships, all personnel. This is Captain Heywan. Prepare for evacuation. We are abandoning the station. All civilians to the transport ships. All military personnel prepare for delaying action. We need to buy time. The station exploded into controlled chaos. People ran through corridors, grabbing what they could carry. Parents clutched children. Soldiers moved to their battle stations. Everyone knew this was the end, but they moved with purpose anyway. That was what humans did. They fought until they couldn't fight anymore. Tae-min's console flashed green. Beacon is ready, Captain. On your order. The Velthran fleet opened fire. The first missiles streaked across space, targeting New Pyongyang's outer defenses. The human ships moved to intercept, launching their own weapons. The battle had begun. All power to the beacon, HFY ordered. Do it now. Taemin pressed the final sequence. Deep in the station's core, something ancient and powerful awakened. Energy poured through circuits that had been dormant for 2 decades. The quantum beacon activated, and a pulse of pure energy erupted from New Pyongyang, expanding outward in all directions at speeds far beyond light itself. The pulse was invisible to normal sensors, but it carried a message. An encrypted signal that raced through quantum space, jumping from system to system, reaching across the vast emptiness between stars. It spread like ripples on a pond, touching hundreds of locations, thousands of locations, carrying a simple message in old Earth military code. This is the end. This is the final beacon. If you can hear this, wake up. Humanity needs you. The station shook violently as Velthron weapons tore through the outer hull. HFY grabbed the console to steady herself. Sparks flew from damaged systems. The lights flickered. Transport ships are away, someone reported. Civilian evacuation complete. All military personnel fall back to secondary positions, HFY ordered. Buy them as much time as you can. Taemin was still at his console, watching the beacon signal spread across his display. Captain, it's working. The signal is propagating across the entire galaxy. I'm seeing echoes from systems we haven't had contact with in years. Any response? Not yet. Captain, if there's anyone out there, they'll hear this. I'm sure of it. The station lurched again. Main power failed. Emergency lights cast everything in red. Through the viewport, HFY could see the Velthron fleet moving closer, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Time to go, she said quietly. Taemin, destroy the console. Don't leave them anything they can use. Taemin activated the purge sequence, then followed HFY toward the escape pods. Behind them, the defense station was coming apart, sections breaking off and tumbling into the void. The human fleet was scattered, overwhelmed. It was over. As her escape pod launched into space, HFY looked back at New Pyongyang one last time. The colony was dying, torn apart by Velthron weapons, but in the wreckage hidden in the broken core of the station, the beacon continued to pulse, invisible, unstoppable, spreading across the galaxy. Admiral Daejung claimed his victory, reporting to his superiors that humanity's last stronghold had fallen. He was right. New Pyongyang was gone, but something else had begun, something the Dominion couldn't see and didn't understand. Across the galaxy in systems the Veltrons had conquered years ago, in places they thought were empty and dead, the beacon's signal arrived. It touched abandoned worlds and forgotten stations. It reached into darkness that had been silent for 20 years, and in that darkness something stirred. Something began to wake. Commander Kiwan was sleeping when the alarm woke him. Not the emergency alarm, but the other one, the one they had maintained for 18 years but never expected to hear. The signal receiver was beeping, steady and insistent, indicating that something impossible had just happened. He rolled out of bed and ran to the command center, not bothering to dress properly. Others were already there, staring at the displays with expressions of shock and disbelief. Lieutenant Jia turned to face him, her eyes wide. Commander, the beacon. Someone activated the beacon. Kiwan felt his heart hammering in his chest. Phantom Base 07 sat inside a hollow moon orbiting a Velthron industrial world. For 18 years, 50 humans had lived in this hidden base, maintaining equipment, training in secret, and waiting for a signal that most of them had stopped believing would ever come. The beacon protocol was simple. If humanity faced total extinction, the last colony would activate a quantum beacon. That beacon would wake the phantom bases scattered across enemy territory. There were supposed to be dozens of bases, hidden on worlds the Velthrons controlled, filled with intelligence operatives and special forces soldiers who had volunteered for this mission before the war was lost. But that was 18 years ago. Most of the people who had gone to sleep in these bases expecting to wake in months had instead lived nearly 2 decades in hiding. Children had been born here. People had grown old. Some had died without ever seeing the sun again. Play the message, Kiwan ordered. The computer decoded the beacon signal. A woman's voice, strained and tired, spoke through the speakers. This is the end. This is the final beacon. If you can hear this, wake up. Humanity needs you. The recording included tactical data. New Pyongyang had fallen. The last free human colony was gone. The beacon was humanity's final act before extinction, except it wasn't extinction because the phantom bases still existed. 50 people here. How many in the other bases? Run the protocol, Kaiwan said. Send the confirmation signal. Let's find out who else is still alive. Jia's fingers moved across her console. The base's quantum transmitter, silent for nearly 2 decades, activated. It sent a carefully encrypted pulse designed to be detected only by other phantom bases. Then they waited. The responses came slowly at first, then faster. 1 base, 2 bases, 5, 10, 20. Kiwan watched the map display fill with green lights as hidden bases across enemy territory confirmed their status. When the count finally stopped, 43 bases had responded. 8,000 personnel total. 8,000 humans who had been living in secret on Velthron worlds waiting for this moment. 8,000, Jia whispered. That's more than I expected. It's not enough, Kiwan said grimly. The Veltrons have millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. But it's something. We're not alone. The beacon message included orders. Phase 1 was beginning. Each base was to assess Dominion military strength in their region. They were to infiltrate communication networks and gather intelligence. They were to prepare for coordinated action but take no offensive steps yet. They were to wait for something called the sword signal. What's the sword signal? Jia asked. I don't know. The files don't say, but I think we're about to find out. Kiwan called a meeting of his command staff. There were only 6 of them, but they had trained for this for years. Now it was real. Jia, you'll take a stealth craft and recon the Velthran facilities above us. I need to know what kind of military presence they have here. Ship counts, weapons, patrol patterns, everything. Sir, if they detect me, then you run. But I don't think they will. They've been complacent for years. They think they won. Use that against them. Jia nodded and left to prepare. Kiwan turned to his intelligence officers. Start tapping into their communication networks. I want to know what they're saying, what they're planning, where their fleets are moving. The base transformed from a waiting station into an active military intelligence hub. People who had spent years maintaining equipment in silence now used that equipment for its intended purpose. Sensors reached out carefully, testing Velthran systems. Computers began breaking encryption codes. The ghosts were starting to move. Jia launched her stealth craft from a hidden bay in the moon's surface. The small ship was coated with materials that absorbed sensor waves, making it nearly invisible. She drifted slowly toward the Velthron shipyard orbiting the industrial world, her heart pounding. What she saw made her breath catch. The shipyard was enormous, easily capable of building 100 ships at once. But most of the berths were empty. She counted only 30 vessels under construction, and none of them were military. Freighters and cargo haulers, not warships. She recorded everything, then carefully moved to observe the military station on the far side of the planet. It was defended by only 20 patrol ships. 20 ships to guard an entire sector. When she returned to base and showed Kiwan the recordings, he understood immediately. They're spread too thin. They conquered too much territory and now they can't defend all of it properly. So what do? We learn everything about them. Every weakness, every patrol route, every supply line. And then we wait for the sword signal. Across the sector, Velthron intelligence officer Hyunwoo was having a very bad day. His job was to monitor the systems under Dominion control and watch for any signs of resistance. For years, this had been the easiest posting in the military. The humans were gone. There was nothing to monitor, but in the past week, strange things had started happening. Small power fluctuations on supposedly dead worlds. Ghost signals appearing and disappearing from abandoned systems. Slight irregularities in communication networks that his sensors could barely detect. His supervisor dismissed it all as stellar interference. But Hyunwoo had grown up on a human world before the conquest. His parents had been human. He knew human technology and he knew human tactics. This wasn't interference. This was someone being very, very careful. He started tracking the anomalies, building a pattern. The ghost signals appeared in systems that had been conquered early in the war. The power fluctuations occurred on worlds that had once had human colonies. Someone was moving in the dark, using old human technology. The possibility terrified him. If humans were still operating in enemy territory, if they had been hiding all these years, what else might they have hidden? He decided to investigate one of the anomalies personally. The readings came from a supposedly dead moon in a system the Dominion had controlled for 20 years. Hyunwoo took a small scout ship and traveled there alone, not wanting to alert anyone until he knew what he was dealing with. As his ship approached the moon, his sensors detected nothing unusual. But when he tried to enter orbit, every system on his ship suddenly died. Power, weapons, communications, everything went dark. His ship drifted helplessly in space. A message appeared on his emergency screen written in Korean, the human language. "You are not our enemy. Do not make yourself one. Turn around and go home. Forget what you saw here. If you report this, we will know. And next time we will not be so gentle." Hyunwoo sat in his dark ship reading the message over and over. Someone was here. Someone was watching. Someone had been watching for a very long time. His system suddenly rebooted all at once. Power returned. His ship was functional again. But the message remained on his screen for 10 seconds before vanishing, as if to make sure he had time to read it carefully. Hyunwoo turned his ship around and left. His mind raced as he flew back to his station. Should he report this? Could he report this? The message said they would know. How would they know? How deep did this go? He thought about his parents, about the human world where he had grown up. He thought about what the Dominion had done to that world, to its people. He made his decision. When he returned to his station, he filed a report that the anomaly was just stellar interference. Nothing to worry about. His supervisor accepted this and moved on to other matters. But Hyunwoo kept copies of all his readings, all his data. And he started watching more carefully. Not to report what he found, but to understand it. Deep down, in a place he barely admitted to himself, he hoped the humans were still out there. He hoped they were planning something. Because the Dominion deserved what was coming. Back in Phantom Base 07, Kiwon received confirmation that the Velthron scout had left without reporting what he found. "We have our first asset," he said to his staff. "An intelligence officer who chose not to expose us. Jia, track that ship. I want to know who was flying it." The Phantom bases continued their work. They mapped Veltron military positions. They infiltrated databases. They made contact with each other through encrypted channels. Slowly, carefully, they built a picture of their enemy. And they waited for the sword signal, wondering what it would mean, wondering what Phase 2 would bring. General Bora looked at the faces on her screen. 43 windows, each showing the commander of a Phantom base scattered across enemy territory. These were the survivors, the ones who had waited 18 years for this moment. Now they were finally awake and working, but they needed direction. They needed to understand what came next. "Thank you all for joining this conference," Bora said. She was the highest-ranking officer who had survived, which made her responsible for coordinating all Phantom operations. "I've asked Dr. Yuna to brief us on what we're actually dealing with." "Doctor?" An older woman appeared on screen. Dr. Yuna had been a civilian astrophysicist before the war, but she had been recruited for the Phantom program because she knew secrets that even most military commanders didn't know. Secrets about what Earth's leaders had planned before they died. "Before Earth fell," Yuna began, "High Command knew we were going to lose, so they created a 3-phase contingency plan. Phase 1, which we represent, was the Phantom bases. Intelligence and reconnaissance assets hidden in enemy territory. Our job was to wait and watch." "What's Phase 2? Commander Kiwon asked. "Phase 2 is much bigger. Before the final battles, Earth evacuated millions of military personnel. Not refugees, not civilians. Trained soldiers, Marines, pilots, and officers. They were put into experimental suspended animation and hidden in massive underground facilities on worlds that would later fall to the Dominion." The conference fell silent. Millions of soldiers in suspended animation, sleeping beneath Velthran cities and military bases. "Hidden for nearly 2 decades. How many facilities?" General Bora asked quietly. 217 facilities scattered across enemy space, each containing between 20,000 and 100,000 personnel. "The total number is approximately 35 million. Someone whispered a curse. 35 million soldiers. That was more than the entire Velthron military in this sector. "Where are they?" Kiwon asked. "That's the problem," Yuna said. "The locations are encrypted in the beacon signal, but activating these facilities requires physical access. Someone has to go to each facility and input the wake-up codes, and many of them are on heavily defended Velthron worlds." "What's Phase 3? Someone asked. Yuna paused. Phase 3 is called the Sword. It's an automated fleet. Before Earth fell, they launched hundreds of massive warships into deep space with advanced AI systems. These ships have been building more ships, maintaining themselves, waiting in the dark beyond sensor range. When Phase 1 and Phase 2 are operational, the Sword activates. That's when we transmit the Sword signal. The weight of it hit everyone at once. Earth's leaders hadn't just hidden a few intelligence bases. They had hidden armies. They had hidden entire fleets. They had built a contingency so vast that it took 20 years to activate, and now that burden fell on 8,000 people in 43 bases. We need to start waking the facilities, Bora said. But we can't do them all at once. We need to choose our targets carefully. Volunteer for the first mission? I'll go, Kiwan said immediately. There's a facility beneath the Velthron industrial world in my sector. According to the data, it contains 50,000 Marines and heavy armor. That's a high-risk target, Bora warned. If you're discovered, if we only hit low-risk targets, we'll take years to wake everyone. We need to move fast. I'll take my best people. We'll get it done. Bora studied him for a moment, then nodded. Approved. But Commander, if this works, the Velthrons will know something is happening. Once you wake that facility, there's no hiding anymore. I understand. 3 days later, Kiwan led a team of 12 operatives through maintenance tunnels beneath the Velthron city. Gia was with him, along with their best engineers and security specialists. They had studied the city's layout for years, memorizing every passage and access point. Now they moved like ghosts through the darkness, avoiding patrols and security systems. The facility entrance was hidden beneath an old industrial complex. The Velthrons had built over it without knowing it existed. Kiwan's team cut through the final barrier and entered a massive underground chamber that hadn't been opened in 20 years. The facility stretched for kilometers in every direction. Row after row of suspension pods, each containing a sleeping human soldier. 50,000 people who had volunteered to sleep through the war, trusting that someone would wake them if humanity needed them again. Start the activation sequence, Kiwan ordered. His engineers went to work, connecting their equipment to the facility's ancient computer systems. The codes from the beacon signal unlocked the master controls. Power flowed through cables that had been dormant for 2 decades. The suspension pods began warming, slowly bringing their occupants back to consciousness. It would take 6 hours for everyone to wake. 6 hours during which Kiwan's team was completely exposed. If the Velthrons detected the power drain, if they sent troops to investigate, there was nowhere to run. 5 hours passed. The first pods opened. Soldiers stumbled out, confused and disoriented. They had gone to sleep expecting to wake in weeks or months. Instead, nearly 20 years had passed. Earth was gone. The war was lost. But they were being given another chance to fight. Among them was Fleet Admiral Yunji, who had commanded Earth's defense fleet in the final battles. She was legendary, known for tactics that had delayed the Velthron advance for years. When she stepped out of her pod and learned how much time had passed, she simply nodded and asked, "What's the situation?" Kiwan briefed her quickly. The phantom bases, the beacon, the plan to wake all the facilities and activate the sword fleet. Yunji listened in silence, her tactical mind already working through possibilities. "We can't fight them fleet to fleet," she said. "They still outnumber us. But if we're smart, if we use what we know about their systems, we can make them afraid. Fear is a weapon too." The 6th hour came. All 50,000 soldiers were awake. The facility was a controlled chaos of people getting dressed, checking equipment, and trying to understand what had happened to the galaxy they once knew. Then the alarms went off. Velthron security forces had detected the power drain. They were coming to investigate. "Time to go," Yunji said calmly. She turned to the assembled soldiers. "Everyone who can fight, we're moving to the surface. Everyone else, secure this facility. We're not giving it back." Kiwan stared at her. "Admiral, there are thousands of Velthron troops up there. And we have 50,000 Marines who just woke up angry. Let's introduce ourselves." What followed became known as the Battle of the Industrial City. 50,000 human soldiers poured out of hidden tunnels and emerged into a Velthron city that had no idea they were there. The shocked security forces tried to respond, but they were completely overwhelmed. Within 3 hours, humans controlled the entire industrial district. Admiral Dae-jung, who had destroyed New Pyongyang, received the report with disbelief. 50,000 human soldiers had appeared from nowhere, on a world that had been under Dominion control for 20 years. How? Where had they come from? He mobilized his forces and rushed to the planet, but by the time he arrived, the humans had disappeared. They had taken what supplies they needed and vanished into the tunnels, leaving only a message painted on the city walls in Korean. "We're awake now." Back in Phantom Base Aero 7, General Bora made her decision. All bases prepare for immediate activation operations. "We're waking every facility we can reach. Admiral Yoonji, you're in tactical command of all awakened forces. Coordinate with the Phantom commanders and begin Phase 2 operations." "What about the sword signal?" Kiwon asked. "Not yet. We need more facilities online first, but soon. Very soon." Across enemy territory, Phantom teams began infiltrating the hidden facilities. Some missions succeeded easily. Others met heavy resistance. But one by one, the facilities woke. Thousands became tens of thousands. Tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. The sleeping armies of Earth were stirring. Admiral Sang-ho was the Velthron officer put in charge of investigating these impossible appearances. He studied the patterns and came to a terrifying conclusion. The humans hadn't been defeated. They had been preparing. Everything Earth's leaders had done in the final days of the war, every seemingly pointless last stand, every delay and sacrifice, it had all been to buy time to hide these assets. He presented his findings to the Dominion Council. They planned this before they lost. They knew they would lose and they prepared for it. "The Phantom bases have been watching us for years. The sleeping soldiers were hidden before we even conquered their worlds. And if the intelligence is correct, there's more. Something called the Sword Fleet." "How many soldiers have been awakened?" a council member asked. "We don't know exactly. At least 5 million. Possibly more. 5 million. Where are they hiding?" "Everywhere. They're using the tunnels we built, the systems we installed. They know our territory better than we do because they've been studying it for 20 years. And Admiral Daejung believes they're preparing for something bigger." Before the council could respond, alerts came in from multiple sectors. More facilities were activating. More soldiers were waking. The numbers kept climbing. 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. General Bora watched the reports flood in. The facilities were waking faster than expected. The convoy disappeared without a trace. One moment, 20 supply ships were traveling through a secure Veltron corridor. The next moment, they were gone. No distress signal, no debris, just empty space where a fleet should have been. Admiral Sang-ho studied the report with growing concern. This was the 15th convoy to vanish in 2 weeks. Communication arrays were failing across 3 sectors. Industrial facilities were experiencing mysterious accidents. And most disturbing of all, Velthron commanders were reporting that their soldiers seemed afraid. This wasn't a conventional war. Fleet Admiral Yoonji had no intention of fighting that way. With 20 million awakened soldiers and the Sword Fleet at her command, she could have tried to meet the Dominion fleet to fleet. She would have lost. The Velthron still had more ships and controlled more territory. Instead, she fought a different kind of war. A silent war. A war where the enemy never knew where the next strike would come from. Phantom base commanders provided intelligence. They had spent 20 years learning Velthron systems, studying patrol patterns and mapping supply lines. Now they used that knowledge to devastating effect. They knew which convoys carried vital supplies. They knew which communication nodes were critical. They knew where the Dominion was weakest. Commander Ki-won coordinated strikes across his sector. His teams would appear from nowhere, hit a target and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. They used captured Velthron equipment and moved through the same tunnels and maintenance passages the Dominion had built without realizing humans had mapped every meter of them. The psychological impact was worse than the physical damage. Velthron soldiers began to fear the dark. They heard stories of entire outposts found empty, the personnel simply gone. They heard about ghost soldiers who appeared without warning and knew things they shouldn't know. Some claimed the humans could walk through walls. Lieutenant Jia led a strike team that specialized in information warfare. They would infiltrate Velthron command centers, copy sensitive data, and plant false information. Dominion commanders would receive reports of human forces in locations where there was nothing, causing them to waste resources chasing shadows. The Sword Fleet operated on a different level entirely. The massive AI-controlled warships would appear at Velthron strongholds, engage in brief but devastating attacks, then jump to dark space before reinforcements could arrive. They never stayed to fight a prolonged battle. They would destroy a shipyard or a command station and then vanish. sometimes appearing on the opposite side of the sector hours later. Admiral Dae-jung tried to predict their movements, but the AI ships fought with perfect coordination and no fear. They calculated odds in microseconds and never made mistakes based on emotion or ego. Fighting them was like fighting mathematics itself. Tae-min, the young communications officer from New Pyongyang, now worked with Phantom Base Intelligence. His job was to coordinate information between the scattered bases and Admiral Yoonji's command. He had activated the beacon that started everything, and now he watched the plan unfold across tactical displays. Admiral Sang-ho is pulling forces from the border sectors, he reported to Yoonji. He's consolidating around the core worlds, trying to protect the Dominion leadership. Good, Yoonji said. That's what we want. The more they pull back, the more space we control. How many systems have reverted to human control? 47 so far. Small colonies, mining operations, agricultural worlds. Nothing major, but it's adding up. Yoonji nodded. For the first time in 20 years, humans were taking back territory, not through massive battles but through the Dominion's own fear. As Velthron forces retreated to defend core territory, humans moved into the vacuum they left behind. But not everything went smoothly. During a reconnaissance mission, Jia's team captured a Velthron scout ship. The pilot was Yunwoo, the intelligence officer who had discovered Phantom Base 07 and chosen not to report it. Ki-won interrogated him personally. Why didn't you report what you found? Yunwoo looked tired. Because I was born on a human world. My parents were human. When the Dominion conquered it, they gave me a choice. Join them or die. I chose to live, but I never forgot where I came from. You've been helping us? Small things. Misfiling reports. Losing data. Making sure certain patrols went to the wrong places at the wrong times. I couldn't do much, but I did what I could. Ki-won made a decision. I'm giving you a choice now. Go back to the Dominion and tell them what you've seen. Or join us, help us for real. Yunwoo didn't hesitate. I'll help. What do you need? What they needed was access to Velthron shipyard defenses. Hyunwoo provided security codes and patrol schedules for a major construction facility. 3 days later, a strike team destroyed the shipyard, setting back the Dominion's ability to build new warships by months. Admiral Sang-ho knew he was losing this war, even if the Council refused to admit it. The humans weren't just attacking military targets. They were dismantling the Dominion's ability to function. Supply chains were disrupted. Communication networks were unreliable. Commanders couldn't trust their intelligence because humans had infiltrated their systems so deeply. He called a meeting with his top commanders. We need to accept reality. The humans didn't lose the war. They delayed it. Everything they've done for the past 20 years was preparation for this. They know our systems better than we do. They've been inside our territory studying us, waiting for their chance. So what do? A commander asked. We go defensive, pull back to the core worlds, shore up our defenses, force them to come to us in a conventional battle. That's exactly what they want, Admiral Dae-jung said quietly. If we consolidate, we abandon hundreds of systems. Those systems will revert to human control. We'll lose half our territory without firing a shot. Would you rather spread our forces thin and lose everything through 1,000 small defeats? Dae-jung had no answer to that. Both choices led to the same result, just at different speeds. General Bo-ra watched the Dominion's forces pull back and smiled. Everything was going according to plan. The Phantom bases had done their job. The awakened soldiers were striking effectively. The Sword Fleet was dominating space superiority. Now came the next phase. Admiral Yoonji, status of the secret shipyard. Yoonji's expression was carefully neutral. It's operational. The first ships are ready to launch. What shipyard? Ki-won asked. He had thought he knew all of Earth's secrets, but clearly there was more. Dr. Yuna appeared on screen. Remember when I said there were 3 phases? I simplified. There were actually 3.5. The half phase was a backup plan so secret that even most Phantom commanders didn't know about it. She brought up a display showing the asteroid field where New Pyongyang had died. Before Earth fell, they sent automated construction ships to remote locations. These ships were programmed to build a shipyard and then build warships. They've been working in complete darkness for 20 years, powered by miniature fusion cores hidden in asteroid fields and dead systems. How many ships? Ki-won asked. The main shipyard near New Pyongyang has produced approximately 4,000 warships, Smaller yards have produced another 1,000. They're not as advanced as the Sword Fleet, but they're newer than anything the Dominion has. And they're crewed by awakened personnel who are very motivated. Kiwan laughed. He couldn't help it. Earth's planners had been insane. Brilliantly, perfectly insane. They had hidden armies, automated fleets, and secret shipyards. They had turned their defeat into the longest, most elaborate trap in military history. "When do we launch them?" he asked. "Soon," Bora said. "But first, we need to make sure the Dominion understands what's about to happen. Admiral Yunji, I want you to liberate the border worlds, the ones the Dominion conquered first. Show them we're not just raiders. We're taking back what's ours." Yunji assembled her forces. 20 million soldiers, thousands of Sword Fleet ships, and support vessels captured or built in hidden facilities. It wasn't enough to conquer the entire Dominion, but it was enough to liberate the border territories. The campaign began with coordinated strikes across 50 systems simultaneously. Velthran commanders, already spread thin, couldn't respond to every attack. They had to choose which systems to defend and which to abandon. Each choice meant more territory falling back to human control. Admiral Daejung found himself facing Yunji's forces at the Battle of Broken Stars. He commanded 200 warships, the finest in the Velthran fleet. She commanded 400, a mix of Sword Fleet AI ships and awakened human crews. The battle lasted 8 hours. Daejung fought brilliantly, using every tactic he knew. But Yunji was better. She had been planning tactics for 20 years while sleeping, running scenarios in her dreams. She anticipated every move and countered before he could complete his maneuvers. When his flagship took critical damage, Daejung realized he wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to cover the Dominion's retreat. Yunji was liberating worlds behind his position while his fleet was tied up in battle. He sent a message to Admiral Sang-ho. "We can't win this way. They're too many and too well coordinated. If you want to stop them, you need to force a decisive battle. Make them commit everything to one location." "What location?" Sang-ho asked. The automated shipyard in the new Pyongyang asteroid field had worked in darkness for 20 years. Robot workers assembled components. AI systems managed construction. Fusion cores powered the endless work. And slowly, methodically, a fleet had been born in secret. Now the darkness ended. Power surged through the shipyard systems. Bay doors opened for the first time in 2 decades. And one by one, warships emerged into the light. They were beautiful, sleek hulls covered in armor designed using every lesson learned from 20 years of defeat. Weapons systems that combined human ingenuity with technology, stolen from Velthran databases. Engine cores built for speed and endurance. Each ship bore a name from old Earth. Cities, heroes, legends, names the Dominion had thought were forgotten. Fleet. Admiral Yunji watched the first ships emerge on her display and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, confidence. She now commanded the Sword Fleet, the awakened soldiers, and 4,000 brand new warships. For the first time since Earth fell, humanity had a real navy. "Ma'am, incoming message from Admiral Sang-ho," her communications officer reported. Yunji read the message. The Dominion was assembling its entire fleet. Every warship they could spare pulled from every sector. They were going to Earth, and they were going to destroy it completely unless humanity surrendered. It was a trap. A desperate attempt to force a conventional battle where numbers still mattered. The Dominion had more ships. If they could pin down the human fleet and force a direct engagement, they might still win. But Yunji had no intention of falling for such an obvious trap. "Send a message to all human forces," she ordered. "We're going to Earth, but not to defend a dead planet. We're going to liberate it." General Bora objected when she heard the plan. "Admiral, if you commit everything to Earth and lose, we lose the war. The Dominion wants you to take this battle. They want me to take it because they think they can win it. But they're wrong about what kind of battle it's going to be." Commander Kiwan and his Phantom base teams were already moving into position. While the Dominion assembled its fleet openly, humans infiltrated the approach routes. They planted mines in jump corridors. They set up communication jammers. They positioned strike teams on nearby moons and stations. Lieutenant Jia worked with Hyun Woo and other former Dominion personnel to hack into Velthran fleet coordination systems. They couldn't take control, but they could introduce small errors, targeting data that was slightly off, sensor readings that showed ghost ships, communication delays of just a few seconds. In conventional warfare, these small advantages wouldn't matter much. But in a massive fleet battle, every second counted. Meanwhile, Taemin coordinated with resistance movements on other worlds. The human liberation had inspired other species under Dominion rule. Some were starting to rebel, seeing that the supposedly invincible Dominion could be beaten. If humanity could win at Earth, these rebellions would spread across the galaxy. The Dominion fleet arrived at Earth first. Admiral Sang-ho commanded from his flagship, with Admiral Dae-jung leading the tactical formations. They had brought everything: 800 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled in this region of space. They positioned themselves in orbit around Earth, weapons aimed at the scarred planet below. The message was clear. "Surrender or watch your homeworld die. Will they come?" Dae-jung asked. "They have to," Sang-ho replied. "It's Earth. No matter how tactical their admiral is, she can't ignore this. She'll bring her fleet and we'll end this." He was right that she would come. He was wrong about everything else. The human fleet arrived in waves. First came the Sword Fleet, massive AI battle carriers supported by automated warships. They jumped in from multiple directions, immediately engaging Dominion forces. But instead of committing to a direct battle, they hit and withdrew, drawing Velthron ships out of formation. Then came the new fleet from the secret shipyards. 4,000 warships with human crews who had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. They didn't engage directly either. They swept through the system in fast attack formations, targeting command ships and coordination vessels. Admiral Dae-jung tried to maintain formation, but the humans were everywhere. They knew this system. They had grown up studying Earth's orbital space. They used every asteroid, every debris field, every spatial anomaly to their advantage. "Where's their main force?" Sang-ho demanded. "Where's Admiral Yunji?" She appeared with the third wave. Transport ships, thousands of them, escorted by heavy cruisers. But they weren't bringing soldiers to fight the fleet. They were landing them on Earth. 20 million awakened soldiers descended to humanity's homeworld. Marines who had been born on Earth, who remembered it before the burning, who had spent 2 decades waiting for this moment. They landed in the ruins of old cities, raised human flags, and started securing territory. The Dominion fleet faced an impossible choice: engage the human warships in a running battle across the system, or go to the surface and fight a ground war against millions of soldiers on their home planet. Sang-ho chose to split his forces. Half would fight the space battle. Half would land and try to stop the ground forces. It was the only logical choice. It was also exactly what Unji wanted. A divided enemy was a weaker enemy. The Battle of Earth lasted 3 days, the longest 3 days in human history. In space, the Sword Fleet's AI ships fought with perfect precision. They calculated trajectories, predicted Velthran movements, and coordinated attacks with millisecond timing. Human crews learned to trust the AI, working alongside the automated ships in formations that no purely organic force could achieve. On the surface, the awakened soldiers fought with fury and desperation. This was Earth. Their Earth. Every ruined city, every burned forest, every scarred ocean reminded them of what they had lost. They fought not just to win, but to reclaim what had been taken from them. Commander Ki-wan led urban combat teams through the ruins of Seoul. Lieutenant Jia coordinated orbital strikes from captured Velthron ships. Hyunwoo helped human forces understand Velthran ground tactics. Every Phantom Base operative used their years of training to maximum effect. Admiral Dae-jung found himself outmaneuvered at every turn. His ships were individually superior, but the human fleet fought as a single organism. Every ship knew where every other ship was. Every captain trusted their fellows completely. The Velthrans had numbers, but the humans had unity. On the second day, Dae-jung's flagship was disabled by a coordinated strike from 6 different human ships. As damage reports flooded in, he finally understood. He had spent his career defeating humans in conventional battles. But this wasn't a conventional battle. This was something else, something humans did better than any species in the galaxy. They adapted. They learned. They refused to quit. Human Marines boarded his ship. They moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency. Not cruel, but not gentle either. When they reached the bridge, Admiral Yunji walked in behind them. "Admiral Dae-jung, we meet at last." He looked at her with something like respect. "You planned all this." "Before Earth fell. You knew you would lose, so you prepared to win later." "We didn't plan to win. We planned to never stop fighting. Winning is what happens when you refuse to accept defeat. She had him taken into custody and turned to her tactical officer. Status of the battle? Dominion forces are in full retreat. Admiral Sang-ho is pulling back to the core worlds. Ground forces are surrendering. Earth is ours. The battle ended on the third day, not with a final epic clash, but with the Dominion fleet withdrawing. Their morale broken, their commanders defeated. They left Earth's system and didn't look back. On the surface, human soldiers stood in the ruins and planted flags. Earth was free. For the first time in 20 years, humanity controlled its homeworld. But Yunji knew the war wasn't over. She sent a message to Admiral Sang-ho. The Dominion can continue this war if you want. We'll fight you on every world and every system for as long as it takes. Or you can negotiate. Your choice. Admiral Sang-ho looked at the casualty reports, the territory losses, the collapsed morale. The Dominion had gone from conquerors to defenders to defeated in a matter of weeks. The council was in chaos. Some wanted to keep fighting. Others wanted peace. The government was fracturing. He made his decision. He contacted Yunji directly. I'm authorized to negotiate terms. What do you want? Human independence. Control of our original 100 systems. Return of all human prisoners and displaced persons. And the Dominion stops all aggressive expansion. The council will never agree to that last part. Then the war continues. I have millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. I can keep fighting for decades. Can you? Sang-ho was silent for a long moment. Then he said, I'll recommend your terms to the council. The negotiations took weeks. The Dominion was deeply divided. Some factions wanted to keep fighting. Others wanted revenge. But the moderate faction led by Sang-ho won the argument. The Dominion couldn't afford this war anymore. Too much territory lost, too many resources wasted, too many other species starting to rebel, inspired by humanity's example. The treaty was signed 3 months after the Battle of Earth. Humanity gained independence and control of 100 systems. The Dominion withdrew its forces. Prisoners were returned. And for the first time in a generation, humans could look